Rosie and I are back out here on a piece of public land that I hunted a lot during the rut this year. We're going to be breaking down a lot of data from the trail camera that is about 200 yards further up the hub system on a large primary scrape that I've been monitoring for a few years. Now this tree stand location, this is actually the tree that I hunted out of during the rut this year, is about 250 yards away from this hub scrape. Now, I heard on a podcast recently, a guy had talked about that very rarely does he go into a piece of public land and find that the best trail camera location is also the best tree stand location. And I think that holds really true to this spot because while that hub scrape gets a ton of deer activity, I get a lot of daylight bucks on it, as you'll see later in this video. The access is difficult. I think that with how tight the bottom of this hub system is over there, that we would get a lot of swirling winds. Where we're standing right now, I'll break it down a little bit, it's a much better tree stand location. So what we have here is this creek that comes all the way up, and you'll see that I was able to come all the way up the base of the creek here and then cut right behind where this deadfall is and then loop up and then climb my way right up to the top of this tree. I had another nice tree behind me for a little bit of a breakup that was holding its leaves. Up on top of that ridge, there is a trail that ran down from up, which I actually saw a buck cruising on that one of the nights that I did hunt here. And then what else I like about this is that if you go up higher on the ridge, up in this area, there's a lot of really good bedding habitat. That hub scrape then sits about 250 yards at the base right there. And then you get up here and there's another good logging cut with a lot of really high quality bedding. So this area that's out right in front of me at about 30 yards had a cluster of really fresh scrapes. So with this area being right on that habitat edge and having that fresh scrape cluster, I felt that this was a really good zone. So in the evening that I did hunt here, I actually saw 3 different bucks. 2 of them came into shooting range. The one that I really would have liked to tag, unfortunately, he was about 60 yards out, running right on the edge of that habitat, habitat being the 2 bedding areas. Unfortunately, wasn't able to fill the tag here, but I did get a lot of activity. Really excited to dive into this camera and break down some of that intel with you guys. So we're gonna walk over there and check that out now. Okay, we made it up to the large hub scrape now. This hub scrape is located underneath of this beech tree right behind my shoulder here. I know I mentioned this a lot, but I really love these beech trees, especially in the base of these hub systems for these large scrapes, because it has a lot of low-hanging branches. You'll look here underneath of this beech tree, all of these branches are all low-hanging and all of them were used as licking branches. There's still a decent amount of snow on the ground, so it's a little bit difficult to see where exactly the ground scraping activity was, but here's the trail camera right over there for reference of how we have this angle. Now what you're going to see is that as I pan out behind the camera, this hub system gets very wide, and that's where it really widens out. And then as I turn around and look beyond where this hub scrape is, things start to get very, very tight. Up here on the left, really good bedding in the logging cut. Up here on the right, really good bedding in the logging cut, and a lot of that activity that we're going to have on this camera, I'm sure, is going to be funneling and right in the back, right up, and then hammering these beech scrapes as they then head out right into the wider part of the drainage system, back out into that area where I was hunting, where I saw all of that rut activity. Okay guys, so as we start breaking down the data here, the first thing that I'm going to do is introduce the HuntRegs app. This is the app that I use to log all of my trail camera data and start to find the consistencies in the deer behavior. So the first thing you're going to have to do in the app is add a property. So what you're going to do is open up the screen, journal tab, plus sign up in the top, plus sign again, and then you're going to type in your property name. I'm just going to use public land for this example. Then you're clicking on add location, going on the map, choosing location, selecting, and then you're ready to enter your journals. To add a journal entry, you'll click the plus sign in the top corner. We're going to be using this young 8-point as an example. You're going to type in the date and the time information from the photo or video that you have, and then you're going to need to add a location after that. You can add a new location if you have not put one in yet, but this is the T-hub scrape. Then we can add the animal nickname. So this is a new buck, so we're just going to give him a basket 8 as a nickname for the example. Then the species, deer, animal, antlered. Now you can log the individual data for a buck if you choose so on this entry. Buck activity at this scrape location increased throughout October and spiked towards the end as we got to Halloween, starting with this unique looking buck, and then another buck showed up later on in the morning, and he spent a ton of time there between the 28th and Halloween. This is actually a buck that I saw on that stand location that I broke down earlier in the video. I decided not to fling an arrow at this guy. When looking back, I definitely feel like I should have as I sit here with my tag later on. But the buck that came in before him was much bigger, and I was clung to the hope that he was going to come back and circle through and work that edge. But what it led me to confirm was that there was a lot of doe activity in those two logging cuts. A lot of this buck activity was in the evening at these scrape locations, which is very common. The bucks like to get right on the downwind side of these doe bedding areas with that downward thermal pull in the base at these thermal hub scrapes, and that was very consistent activity. And then after this, there was a big lapse in activity. The next buck that showed up did not come in until the end of November with a brief visit at the scrape, another visit during the firearm season, which appears he was spooked, and then a final visit by a buck on December 6th, scrolling through the area. Back to the HuntRegs app, once you have all your data entered, you can begin to break things down. By clicking on this graph section, you can get an idea of when the deer were spending time there. We see that there was a lot of south-southwest wind activity. These bucks visited the scrape. Data over time, that spike in activity right around Halloween, as I mentioned. You can break things down like the temperature. You can see where there's consistencies in the pressure, which a high pressure led to more activity at this scrape location. And you can also break it down by time of day, and you'll see that there's a lot of buck activity at this scrape location in the evening. To filter data on an individual buck, you can go ahead and type in the location. This one is the T-Hub scrape. Then click on the nickname. We name this buck the Heavy Rack Buck, and then we can go back and then we can start to collect all of the data of when this buck visited this trail camera location, so that way we can start to draw some consistencies. For example, on a buck like this, if we want to try to make a move on him next year, we can have a pretty good idea on what the specific weather conditions were when he was visiting the scrape. And with this example, we know that he spent a lot of time here at the end of October, particularly in the evenings. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Lots of really cool data that we were able to pull from this trail camera. I have a lot more cams to pull yet this year, so if you like this video, make sure to drop a comment down below. Let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I have a lot more whitetail content coming your way, both on the public land side like this and on the private land side as well. We'll see you guys in the next one.